Take a moment to read Unit 5, Problem 10.3, Adding Functions. Students focus in this problem on combining functions to make a new function. They are asked to sketch a graph of the sum of the two functions. Students may find it easier to do these problems using a table or by measuring distances on the graph and combining those heights, or adding the y values of each point. In a class, this would be done by a small group of students. I've added a table to each of our problems to assist us while we're working through. Let's first look at the e of x function. At -2, the e of x looks to have a height of about 7. At -1, it looks the height to be about 2.6. At 0, our height or our y value is about 1. At 1, I would estimate that to be about 0.4. At 2, I would say about 0.1. At 3, 0.05. And at 4, I'm going to call this 0. We know that this is probably an asymptote here, which means it would be closer and closer to 0 and never cross it. But to make it easier when graphing, we're going to call it 0. And then after 4, those would all be 0 for e of x. Now let's do the same thing for L of x, the straight line. At -2, it appears that we are at -2. At -1, we're at a height of -1. At 0, our height is 0. At 1, our y value is 1. At 2, our y value is 2. 3 is 3, and 4 is 4. So now, if we were to add our y values or combine our two columns, e of x and L of x, or think of it as adding the heights together, we would get a new function, s of x. 7 and -2 become 5. 2.6 plus -1 is 1.6. 1 plus 0 is 1. 0.4 plus 1 is 1.4. 0.1 plus 2 is 2.1. 3 plus 0.5 is 3.05. And 0 plus 4 is 4. From here, we're going to go ahead and plot these points to sketch our graph. So at -2, we're going to go up to 5 and put a point. -1, 1.6. And again, just estimate. At 0, we're going to go to 1. At 1, we're going to go to 1.4. At 2, we're going to go to 2.1. At 3, we're going to go to 3.05. At 4, we're going to go to 4. And then after this, you're going to notice that it's just going to follow this L shape because we know that our e value is 0. It's whatever L of x is going to be from then on. So you can just follow that kind of shape after that. And we get this generic shape when we graph it. Let's go on to the rest of these problems. Now for everyone in problem number 2, we're going to use e of x. So I just copied our e of x from up above and brought those points down. So now let's focus on filling in m of x for this first problem. So at -2, we are at -1. And then it appears we stay at -1 no matter the value because this is a horizontal line. So when we add these two together, we're going to do 7 and -1, which is 6. 2.6 and -1, 1.6. This is 0. -0.6, -0.9, -0.95, and then -1. And then we're going to stay at -1 after 4 because, again, e of x stays at 0, so it becomes whatever m of x is after that. So if we were to graph this, -2, 6, -1, 1.6, 0, 0, 1, negative 0.6, 2, negative 0.9, 0.95, negative 1, and then we stay at negative 1 after that. So we get a very similar shape to E of x for our new function. On to the next one. This graph is n. So find our points for n of x. At negative 2, it's at 2. At negative 1, it's at 1. At 0, it's at 0. And then it goes negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. So when combining these to get our new function, we get 9, 3.6, 1, negative 0.6, negative 0.9, 1.09. Sorry. Negative 2.95, negative 4. And then after that, again, we're going to stay at whatever n of x is. So I think it's negative 5, and then it's negative 6. So let's go ahead and plot this. So negative 2, 9 is going to be off, so we'll start at negative 1. Negative 1, 3.6, 0, 1, 1, negative 0.6, 2, negative 1.9, 3, negative 2.95, and then negative 4, negative 5, negative 6 after that. So there is our new graph. These next two are quadratic functions. So now we're doing P of x. P of x at negative 2 is at about 0.4, 0.01 for negative 1, then 0, 0.01, 0.4, 1, and 1.6. So if we add E of x and P of x together, we get our new function. So 7.4, 2.61, 1, 0.41, 0.5, 1.05, and then 1.6. So let's go ahead and graph those. So at negative 2, we're going to go to 7.4, which is going to be a little bit off the graph. At negative 1, we're going to go to 2.61. At 0, we're going to go to 1. At 1, you're going to go to 0.41. 2, 0.5. At 3, 1.05. At 4, 1.6. And then after that, we're going to kind of stick with the shape that we already were for P. And we get kind of an odd looking U-shape graph. Continuing on to the last one, we have Q. Again, this is a quadratic, but this is a reflected quadratic. So it's facing downwards. We've got negative 0.4, negative 0.1, 0, negative 0.1, negative 0.4, negative 0.95, and then negative 1.6. So when we combine these together for our new function, E of x plus Q of x, you get 6.6, 2.5, 1, 0.3, negative 0.3, negative 0.9, and then negative 1.6. And again, everything after this would be the same as what Q of x is on the graph. So go ahead and graph this. At negative 2, we go to 6.6. At negative 1, we go to 2.5. At 0, we go to 1. At 1, we go to 0.3. At 2, we're at negative 0.3, 3, negative 0.9, and then 4, negative 1.6. And then after that, take Q, follow along with Q. And there is our shape, almost looks cubic.